I had a huge lesson handed to me in public, in Parliament, in Canberra, Australia. So it was live on TV. Right. So I partnered up and was brought into a group that wanted to create a connection, a rail connection between Sydney and Melbourne because of the urban sprawl that's going on there, because of they can't afford housing, blah, 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 blah. Those single family homes are housing, three and four families, where quality of life is out of control. These duplex homes in the suburbs now are just spreading, spreading, spreading because the families have to live somewhere and there's no
Right.
affordable housing. So you get urban sprawl. And the government's been trying to correct this forever. Um, and so what we did was we took a look at the population of Australia, that 85% of the population live within 10 kilometers of the coast. That's a huge continent, which means that it's not in balance,
Right.
So when there has been the attempt to do a rail, of course they always hug to the coastline with their designs, but we decided to go different. We went inland into the bush where there's no one there, right? Except for the Aborigines and a couple of small towns. But
Right.
by doing this, we're rebalancing the Australian population, which is very important to the Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense, their biggest worry in Australia is to be invaded by the Indonesians. Isn't that amazing? So the
Yeah.
entire North Coast is always like on edge because there's overpopulation in all the islands in Indonesia, and they see a huge continent that's open. They're going, hmm. So yeah, the Department of Defense of Australia, their biggest worry is to be invaded by Indonesia, which is, I mean, that was something I didn't know, right? So I learned this. So this was a very, very important project. It was called Clara, and we chose a high-speed rail from Japan. It was maglev, and the thing with this particular technology at the time was that every 100 kilometers it would have to stop and recharge. But that was perfect because we almost had 900 kilometers of where we were going on the interior to connect Sydney and Melbourne. Now, Sydney is up the coast on the east coast, and Melbourne is on the south coast. So it was like a 90-degree curve is what we were doing there. But as we stopped every 100 kilometers, we could actually put a town. So we created 8 smart cities as the stops along this route, and we limited the amount of people that would live there to 250,000 people. You could never get bigger than that. And the idea was that to theme the 8 different stops so that it did not become just more urban sprawl between Sydney and Melbourne. They were distinct cities. We partnered up with Qantas Airlines because their biggest route, their biggest moneymaker is between Melbourne and Sydney, the shuttle, and we didn't want to see them as competition. So you can get frequent flyer points. They were in control of all the luggage, all that stuff. So it was a perfect merger that way. But what was also cool was that I used the Disney model. So I kept out of the spotlight because I didn't want to be seen as the American. That's the Yankee coming into Australia, just pushing their crazy ideas, right? So
Right.
my front face were my Australian partners. Um, and what I did was we created these cities. One was a sports city, one was an educational city, one was a healthcare city, blah, 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 blah. And we gave them sports. Each one had their own soccer team, their own rugby team, and cricket teams and all this stuff. So it became like a cultural exercise, which was awesome, right? But I went ahead and I was asked to be the presenter at Parliament to the Prime Minister and all the MPs out there, and I gave my presentation. There was no money down on behalf of the taxpayers, so I wasn't looking for any money. I didn't need the land because I actually bought options on desert. I mean, it's the bush, right? Couple of farmland things, but I was dealing with farmers. And I created 8 separate companies to go and negotiate where I knew where the stops were going to be. So there's this mid-sized city called Shepparton, just north of Melbourne. There was a couple of other smaller towns, but I did not go near those towns because I wanted these cities to be standalone. Plus,
Okay.
the people that are in these smaller cities and towns, Well, they're like Crocodile Dundee guys, right? They don't want to be a city surrounding them. So it was very um, uh, it was designed that way, that we did not want to touch the existing towns and cities. We want 8 new cities. And then I bought options that made these clusters with 8 separate companies so that no one picked up, why is this guy buying all this land on options, right? So my options were, I'm buying it for, like, let's say for $1 an acre, right?
Right.
When we made the announcement, it shot up to $100 an acre. And guess where the money came from to build these things? That spread. I borrowed against the land spread, right?
Very
So
interesting.
I presented this to Parliament. I got a standing ovation, even as a Yankee. And there's one MP, he was very proper. And he goes, Paul, I have to say, as an American, you've really captured the Australian spirit with this. I commend you. I love the plan. You know that in New South Wales, we're much different than Victoria. You're spanning into those 2 states. In Victoria, prostitution is legal. In North South Wales, it's not. So where do you plan on putting a sin city, or are you going to spread your smut through all 8 cities? His words. I'm like, said, I'll have to get back to you. I
Yeah,
forgot that,
yeah,
people are people. Red light
yeah,
districts are going to happen. I totally whiffed at it. I
right.
did not put the human condition in place. So, to get back to your question, how do you get people to embrace these things? Treat
Yeah,
them as human.
yeah,
Give them space. Let them figure out what their community wants to be, because there is no utopia.